Got camera one going. We got the GoPro going. We got audio going. And we got this other camera about to be going. Alright, we got So Much Podcast, episode 3, and this is going to be Max AA Talk.
What's up, guys? Oh my God, I'm so high on life right now and so excited to be back in front of this microphone and these cameras and with Danny and Brandon in the same room as me. First and foremost, you guys are going to have to get used to me thanking the ever-living shit out of everybody constantly because the love and warmth has been so big and so incredible. For just having 2 episodes and not really knowing what I'm doing. Brandon and Danny's professionalism and help has made this podcast, for lack of a better term, so much fun. Definitely get used to me overusing so much as a play on words and a pun all the time. I get a big kick out of it. I don't really care if you guys do. So today, I want to do kind of the last the last piece of you guys getting to know me. With just a focus on me. We don't want collectively this podcast to be about me. It just so happens that I am living with so many different chemical imbalances, along with, addiction and alcoholism and living in recovery, that I have a lot of personal insight. So the point is to share my personal insight via my struggles to help those that are going through it or that are trying to get to know or help those that are going through it. So this will be probably the last time that you guys hear me just talk about me for quite a while. Like we said last episode, we will be having a lot of guests. I do have Kathleen coming on, who's my licensed clinical social worker and resident expert, who's been tapping in with me a lot lately and really helping me guide this. But I was thinking yesterday, we kind of wing these episodes because there is so much to talk about that there's not really there's a wealth of places where we can pull these topics from, and there's tons to talk about formally and informally. And yesterday I had a really, really cool thing happen to me. I got asked by 2 close friends of mine to speak at 2 different AA meetings, one at 9 in the morning in front of about 40 men and one at 3 in the afternoon, which is a large open mixed group in front of about 40 different people, people in rehab, active alcoholics in recovery with 30 years sober, all the way down to people with 60, 30, 18 days clean. For me, getting to share my story in a manner that can be helpful to other people is one of the most exhilarating, one of the most invigorating, one of the most electrifying experiences for me. And it's what got me into wanting to not just do this podcast, but what got me into wanting to pursue my master's in social work and do public speaking and motivational speaking and work with people on a large scale. And I thought, you know what, I've given this talk so many times, and it really is a great opportunity for people to get to know me and how I got to where I'm at. As opposed to when we talked about the podcast 2 episodes ago, what got us to the podcast. This is a much different story. This is a story of what got me to a place where I even felt the need to address what was going on with me and how I got help. In AA, the form and function of a talk is what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I wanted to give you guys a kind of informal version of my AA-NA talk that I also do and use for public speaking engagements with local teens and youth at risk, so that you guys can get a better understanding of kind of my resume. Whenever you're in AA and you give a talk, you do a thing called a drunkalogue, which tells people a lot about what got you to getting sober, what got you to hit rock bottom. And that a lot of people in AA call, I earned my stripes, right? So this is me giving you guys an insight into how I earned my stripes to be able to talk about the stuff that we talk about on So Much. I was born and raised in U City, really diverse community. My I never wanted for anything. My parents both grew up very, very low income, very, very low income, but both worked their way up through school, through college, paid their own way through college, paid their own way through law school. And by the time I was in my teens, my parents were, I've lived an extremely well-off life. I grew up in U City. I went to U City High School. My experience as a kid and going into adolescence and my teen years, my experience became centered around drugs and alcohol around the age of 15. I got diagnosed with ADD, ADHD in second grade. And when I got diagnosed with ADD, ADHD in second grade, it was a relatively big deal. It was not like it is today where tons of kids are taking Adderall and tons of kids are taking Ritalin and Vyvanse and Concerta and Focalin and all this stuff. All I had was Ritalin and methylphenidate. And whenever we got called up out of class to go get our medicine, because they didn't have time release meds at the time, all the kids who had meds got called up at once. And for me trying to feel like a normal kid in school to be pulled out a little bit before lunch or a little bit before gym or a little bit after this or a little bit after that, and have to go stand at the front of the class in a line with other kids that as a young kid I had negative associations with because of whatever the outward problem they were having was. And very quickly that can lead you to be stigmatized as a kid who can hear names like retard, who can hear names like dummy or crazy. Whenever they see the kids that are standing in line to go get their meds with you, whenever those kids act out, that stigma attaches to you as well. So I never really felt comfortable in my own skin from jump. I talked a lot about personal validation and affirmation coming from external sources over the last 2 episodes. And that was a driving force for me in my drinking and drugging. I started drinking in high school because it was what other kids were doing. I started smoking weed in high school because it was what other kids were doing. My motivation early on was not to escape a feeling. I was not running from how I felt. I didn't realize I was at the time, but that was not my motivation. My motivation for getting fucked up early on was the sense of community and the sense of connectivity that came with it. Early on in high school, if you were going to get a bag of weed, you usually had to have multiple guys pitch in. Somebody had to have a car, somebody had to have a place to smoke, somebody had to get blunts, somebody had to know a dealer, all these sort of things. And so it was like all these guys coming together as one unit of friends to like complete a mission. And it was the same with drinking too. It was, we need to get a 30 pack. It's enough to get us all fucked up. Who's got the money? Who's got the fake ID? Who's got the car? And you felt important. You felt connected if you could play a role in getting that stuff. I never once, in high school woke up and was like, I got to get fucked up today. Like never happened. But I did wake up like, what are my friends doing? What's going on tonight? What do I need to be part of? Like where are the cool kids at? And very quickly, this led me to, get drunk and get high all the time. It was the number one thing that we had fun doing, and it made you relevant. If you did it, you got invited to parties if you had access to it. And that pretty quickly led me into selling weed. And I followed that path all through failing in and out of college. More times than I can count, selling much harder drugs on a much larger scale, and drinking and drugging all the way through age 27, as an addict and an alcoholic. When I started selling weed and got into selling drugs, for me, it was an international passport to every party, to every group of kids. I went to U City, but I spent a lot of time out in the county with my more well-to-do friends, but I also spent a lot of time in more roughneck neighborhoods in and around U City, Pagedale, Normandy, Wellston, Ferguson, North County. And having access to drugs, having access to weed or whatever it was at the time, or having access to alcohol got you invited places. It got you included. It made you important. And for me, I felt so shitty at home alone that I never wanted to be there. So I needed to corner a market that made me valuable to other people. So I got invited everywhere because I always had weed and I always had access to alcohol. I followed this same pattern through college. I started selling more hardcore drugs, X, Molly, MDMA, Coke, and I got into the bar and restaurant industry as a barback, and then a security guard before I was 21, a barback, and then a bartender, because I thought, what's better than being in one fraternity, work at the bar that they all go to, and you're basically in all of them. I got invited everywhere. I built up a really big, really highly visible, really positive social reputation, and that kept me high for a long time. It kept me good for a long time. Throughout that time, though, I always noticed that there was something different about me than my friends that were drinking and drugging basically the same way that I was. There was always a lot of people around me that would get fucked up way worse than I would. Blackout drunk, piss their pants, fall and chip their tooth, crash tons of cars. Now, granted, I crashed cars and I got in fights. I broke bones. I had my fair share of blackout nights. But generally speaking, I kept it together when I was getting fucked up, because I was using a lot of different things. I would drink and then use uppers to mellow out, or to be able to stay more sober. I would use different combinations of things to find the perfect high, the perfect drunk. But where I noticed the difference was, as a college kid, you can't really diagnose yourself as an alcoholic, because everyone around you, if you choose to be in the drinking scenes, operates as an alcoholic, even if they aren't. Where the differences showed up was on a Sunday morning after a 4-day bender. My friends would wake up and eat a cold piece of pizza and some cereal and grab their books and hit the library hungover, maybe smoke some cigarettes, maybe take their ADD meds, but they'd get back to their work. I'd wake up and I'd basically have two options. I was either gonna figure out how to kill myself to end how miserable I was, or I was gonna figure out how to get fucked up again, because there was no way in hell that I was gonna be able to pull myself together to do anything normal. And that was a difference I just couldn't understand. Why are my friends passing all their classes whenever these guys get piss pants drunk and fall all over the place? These guys run up huge gambling debts, losing money in poker and sports betting. They get all these DWIs, all this stuff. And I couldn't understand why this stuff affected me differently. But because I've been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, clinical depression, was seeing therapists, had ADHD, my belief, which, I've talked about multiple times already just in these 3 short episodes, was that if I got rid of the stuff in my head, then I could drink and drug regularly. And as we all know, you have to get rid of the drinking and drugging so that you can handle the stuff in your head. I didn't change anything about my lifestyle. I kept failing in and out of college. And at about 24, 25, I came back to St. Louis and I picked up right where I left off at Mizzou. I was drinking and drugging six nights a week, sleeping on the 7th day all the way through, bartending, drug dealing. And my life was riddled with dishonesty. I kept everything from my parents. I didn't have relationships with my sisters. Most of my friends viewed me as unreliable. The only time I saw my friends was when they would come up to the clubs while I was bartending, or if I went out and drank and drugged after I got off work and they were still up. And most of the people that I hung out with on a regular basis were much older than me and were very active and aggressive addicts and alcoholics that worked in the industry, the service industry, bar and restaurant industry with me. This really quickly got me into a lot of trouble, because trying to drug deal in a big city as opposed to a little college town is a lot different. You step on toes, you have to worry about a lot more things, and it gets a lot more dangerous. I caught a litany of felony charges that could have put me away to up to 30 years. It might have even been more than that if they ran concurrently or ran consecutively. In the process of me trying to figure out where I belonged with drug dealing, with partying, with club promoting, with all this, I realized that everyone around me was growing up and I was just doing the same thing. My friends were getting married and having kids. I was running more parties, running more clubs. That lifestyle eventually wore me all the way out. I was never one for downers. I was never one for smoking weed really after high school. I was never one for taking opiates or taking benzos or anything like that. Because every reason that I had to use drugs was about trying to connect with you, was about trying to connect with other people. Until one day I was introduced to something that was given to me for helping my hangovers, and it was Xanax. And for the first time ever, I felt completely comfortable in my own skin. I could stay at home alone on the Xanax. I took 1.5 milligram or milligram football, Xanax, little blue guy or orange guy, and or a little white guy or blue guy, and everything went away. I was comfortable. I was happy. I could call my mom on the phone without having anxiety. My shakes were gone. Food tasted better. Pillows were softer. I thought it was the miracle drug for me. I knew it was related to Klonopin, and I had been prescribed with Klonopin before. So my belief then became, with my crazy addict rationalization, my belief then became that this is what I was meant to be taking, and they just hadn't figured it out yet. So I began to self-medicate. What happened then is, as I mixed Xanax in with everything else that I was doing, I started to become almost professionally clumsy. I got in more car accidents because I would black out more. I got in more fights because I was more sloppy and wasn't as aware. And I ended up suffering a lot of injuries. I shattered all the bones in my right hand in a drunk driving accident. I still have pins in this finger. I dislocated both shoulders, a total of almost 30, I think 17 in one and 12 in the other. I had scar tissue built up. It looked like rings on a tree. I tore both my labrums, both my rotator cuffs. I fractured my T6 and T7 vertebrae falling out from an overdose. I think I have a couple others. Now, shoulders back. Well, what this did was it introduced me to opiate painkillers. And when I got introduced to Vicodin and then Percocet and Roxys and Oxycontin and fentanyl, the combination of those and Xanax to me was better than anything on earth. I had no reason to leave the house. They kept me out of trouble. I could get a pint of ice cream and a bag of pills. I could stay at home with my girlfriend. I could stay at home with my roommates. I didn't need to go out. I didn't need to party. I had medicine for my pain, and I had medicine for my crazy head. And I didn't think about it as getting fucked up. I thought about it as medicating. And that was, my rationalization. Well, what very quickly happened is I turned from drug dealer to drug addict. I turned from dope boy to dope fiend. And as if my life hadn't already completely fallen apart, now I wasn't even capable of pretending that it hadn't completely fallen apart. I isolated, I stayed at home. I didn't share my usage or addiction with anybody. I could barely drink because I was so high on pills all the time. It would put me over the edge. I would nod off I nodded out at my sister's graduation. I nodded out and fell back at a chair at lunch after her graduation in front of my whole family and extended family. I fell asleep at the wheel at stoplights and rolled out into oncoming traffic more than once. One time, a homeless guy ran out into the street and actually opened up my car door and put his foot on the brake for me and had to wake me up. I almost choked to death on an 800 milligram ibuprofen that had 10 milligrams of oxycodone, which is a Percocet, as the active pain killing ingredient with the ibuprofen. I almost choked on that. Like I said, I fractured my T6 and T7 vertebrae, had compression fractures, and I lost almost an inch of height after they settled down back to the size that they were going to be after the fractures occurred. I could barely walk a lot. I couldn't remember anything that I told anyone. Nobody believed anything that I said, and nobody really listened to me. I still to this day see on Time Hop Facebook posts that I made at 4 a.m, high on pills, whenever everything was misspelled, that I got to delete because it's so eerie and bizarre to see that I just was completely delusional. I used and manipulated everyone in my life to get what I wanted. I lied to everybody. I didn't answer calls. I didn't answer texts. All I spent my time on was getting high and trying to figure out how to get money to get high once that high was over with. Throughout this entire time, I never once thought about the word addict or alcoholic. I still always thought that I was just mad fucked up in my head with the ADHD and the anxiety and depression and suicidal tendencies, all this stuff, right? I never once thought that I was an addict or an alcoholic. Not that I had any negative or positive associations with addicts and alcoholics, but, you know, you think alcoholic and societally, culturally, you know, we think of the old man in the dirty trench coat, brown bagging it outside of the gas station, and you hear heroin addict and you think they're, you know, dope fiend or pillhead or crackhead or whatever, and you think of, you know, the homeless guy under the bridge that pops out and asks you for money, or is walking up and down the street in Times Square, you know, with paranoid schizophrenia, talking to himself or whatever. You have all these ideas about this stuff that, you know, that are kind of programmed into our heads through the media and culturally. I had just never thought that that was me. I really thought that I was just so screwed up emotionally that the only thing that was going to make me feel better was external substances, and that I was just meant to go through life a lot less happy than other people. And that was just the way that, you know, shit shook out. Eventually, a car accident that I'd gotten into landed me a 6-figure settlement, and I got paid out on it a couple years after. It was the accident that shattered this hand. And in a matter of about 10 days, I spent 20 grand of it. And that was whenever my family really started to kind of notice that something was really going wrong, because I was isolating so much. I wasn't allowing anyone to really know how bad things were getting. You know, my sisters knew before anybody, but didn't know how to go about it. I mean, I forgot one of their 21st birthday parties, or one of their 21st birthdays. I was constantly lying and saying that I got them gifts and that they got lost in the mail. I was, you know, spending money that I would set aside to get them stuff. I would spend that on drugs. I would ask my parents for money for things that I needed for school, even though I wasn't in school. All sorts of things. My mom and dad were constantly bailing me out, but still I was selling it to them like what was going on with me was this emotional, you know, was all this emotional distress. So my mom was constantly trying to help me find new therapists. And in reality, I just didn't realize it at the time, but I was just an active drug addict and an active alcoholic. And, you know, I was in the throes of my addiction. Coming into March of 2013, I hit a rock bottom where I tried to change everything by getting rid of party drugs, alcohol, and opiates, and thinking that I just needed Xanax and that Xanax would be what would save me. In the process of trying to get rid of all that stuff, my emotional crashes during withdrawal, while I was trying to this half-ass version to get myself sober, led me to crash. And in a span of a week, I tried to kill myself twice. Once I tried to overdose, and obviously I didn't. I woke up high as a kite. I might have had a mild overdose, but I came out of it. And the second time, I was over at a close friend of mine's house really early in the morning or really late at night, whatever you want to call it. And I was high on Molly, and I had been drinking Jack Daniels and Grand Marnier because I didn't have any Xanax and I didn't have any Oxy. And I was trying to do something to make myself feel better, and nothing was working. And while he was in the kitchen, I took his Glock 40 caliber and handgun, and I chambered a bullet, and I put the gun to my head, and I pulled the trigger, and the gun misfired. If you know anything about handguns, you know anything about Glocks, you know that a Glock misfiring is like a 1 in 1 million thing. It doesn't happen. They're some of the best made handguns on earth, and the reason that they're so popular and used by police and used by the Army and all these men in service is because they are so well made. They don't jam. They don't misfire. And that night, that morning, I didn't process that as a God moment. I didn't process that as an aha moment or a burning bush moment. I processed that as, damn, you are such a loser. You literally can't even kill yourself, right? But as it set in over the next day or two, I realized that I might be meant for something more. And I went over to my parents' house while they were at work one day. I brought my dogs over there. I broke down in tears, and I started thinking about my life, and I was like, okay, if I'm really going to change everything, what is the thing that I do the most that I got to change? So I got to stop working in the service industry. I got to stop dealing. I got to stop doing this, that, and the other. Now, but when I really thought about it, I spent every waking moment of my life high or trying to get high. And when I figured that out, I immediately realized that I was an addict and an alcoholic. And instead of being ashamed or instead of being worried, I actually felt relief because I knew that there was help for addicts and alcoholics. Up until that moment, I thought that I was so unique and so special and so different that no one would be able to help me. But then whenever I realized that, oh shit, maybe you're just a drug addict. Oh, they got programs for that. They got rehabs, they got AA, they got NA, they got all these different programs, 12-step programs. Shit, some people go to church for it. They have medicines for it. There's all this sustainable help everywhere that you can have access to. There's phone numbers you can call. And I hadn't tried any of this. I hadn't asked anybody for help yet. And the way that hit me was, it's so foreign to me because the first thing that I thought was, wait a second, I don't have to do it my way this time. There's other ways. My whole life, I tried to do everything my way. If I didn't like a class, I didn't go. If I liked a class, I got 110% in it. If I didn't like a test, I figured out a way to steal it, have a smarter kid fill out the answers, photocopied it 100 times, sold it to everybody, made a profit, and got an A. But I was not going to spend 1/10 of the time it took me to do that sitting in the library studying. It was my way or the highway with everything. Didn't agree with anything my parents said, didn't agree with anything my sister said, didn't agree with anything my friends said. It's always my way. When I realized I was an addict and an alcoholic, and that there were treatment centers for dual diagnosis with people with emotional disorders and addiction and alcoholism, I wanted nothing more than to do what I was told. So I got on the phone. I called a close friend of mine who had a year sober. He put me on the phone with another guy. That guy sent me out to treatment. And when I came back, my entire life changed. All of a sudden I had my car paid off. All of a sudden I had a relationship with my sisters. All of a sudden I had relationships with my best friends again. I was going places. I was getting invited places. In my first 2 years of sobriety, well, my first year of sobriety, I probably gained like 30 pounds because instead of picking up pills, I was picking up syrup and butter. But the second year of sobriety for me, everything that I learned in sobriety, I applied to my physical health, and I lost over 70 pounds in a year. I went from 306 down to about 230, 236. All of a sudden my car was paid off. I had a loft downtown. I had a full-time job as a residential administrator at St. Patrick's Center, working with other people. I was giving talks at local high schools about drinking and drugging and mental health awareness and addiction and recovery. I had an amazing girlfriend that loved me. I was playing basketball. My friends were asking me to help them and consult on running their companies, their bars and restaurants. I was hiring people for people. Everything was hitting on all cylinders. And for about three and a half years, that was my life. Those felony charges I told you guys about, they popped out. They caught up to me. I had 11 months sober when they caught up to me. And I had to go turn myself in. I was in jail. I did my little 36 hours or whatever. And when they let me out, I went to go talk to my attorney, and my attorney was like, this is really ugly. You're looking at time no matter what, no matter who your mom and dad are, no matter who you know, whatever. You're in some trouble. You're looking at jail time here. And we're going to try to get it down to like 5. But, you might have to do 2.5 and then, get out on parole or whatever. He's like, but to do that, you need to do community service. You need to go to AA meetings. You need to volunteer. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I said, Paul, I don't know if my dad told you or not, but I already I do all this stuff. I do all this stuff every week. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I got sober 11 months ago, man. I tried to kill myself. And I had a God moment, and my parents helped me. I used a bunch of money that I had left from trapping and from the car accident payoff, and my parents helped me a bunch financially, and I went to treatment. And since then, I have a sponsor in AA. I sponsor other kids in AA. I do public speaking. I do this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I work for a non-for-profit downtown. And my attorney said, holy shit, we got to get you in front of the judge. So we pulled out. We got to meet the judge outside of court, and I got to tell my story to her and the prosecutor. And I gave this story, essentially. And they made an unprecedented decision that even though all of my charges were reflective of a drug dealer that was manufacturing and distributing and potentially violent and distributing on a large scale, that because of how much I turned my life around on my own, because I had decided to do it myself to save my own life, they made the unprecedented decision of letting me finish letting me do 15 months in St. Louis County Drug Court, which is an alternative sentencing program. The deal was if I finished in any more time than the minimum 15 months, that I was going to go to jail. And I couldn't get sent to choices, the 3-month program. I couldn't take 18 months. I couldn't take 15 and a half months. I had to finish it in 15 months. And it was a pain in the ass. So I commend anyone that's done DWI or drug court. But I did it, and I did it with flying colors. And, you know, that was one of the first major miracles of sobriety for me was, you know, my decision to get sober a year later kept me out of prison for anywhere from 5 to 35 years. Going into my 3rd and 4th year sober, my life was going so well that I made a really big mistake, and I started to put everything in sobriety before the work that got it for me. I let my ego take over. I let external forces take over. I started paying attention to what people thought. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped working my program, and I relapsed. I got back to taking 22 milligrams xanax bars a day, between 15 and 20 a day. I was blacked out all the time, lying to my girlfriend at the time, lying to my parents, lying to my friends, being shady with money, isolating, getting in fights again. And the really, really cool thing about AA is kind of like what a lot of people feel about religion, is that nothing changes about the program except whether or not you decide to work it. So I didn't have to have an aha moment or a coming to God moment or hit another rock bottom. One day I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I said, you know what? AA never stopped working. I just stopped working it. And that was it. I picked up the phone. They call it the 500-pound phone. I picked up the 500-pound phone. I made the hardest call, tell somebody that I'd relapsed. Got back. I went, had my mom help me out, dropped a bunch of money to detox. I did 6 days down at St. Alexius Hospital detoxing off Broadway all by myself. Didn't tell anybody about it. Got out, admitted myself to outpatient, and got sober again. Got a new sponsor, went to a new home group, the whole deal. And since then, my life has been absolutely incredible again. All the promises came true. Jobs, financial stability, relationships with my friends and family, physical health, all of it. It's been absolutely incredible, and it all hinges on whether or not I do the work. Something that I say to a lot of people that's been said to me a lot, and I say it about a lot of things, not just about recovery, not just about sobriety. It applies to mental health, it applies to everything, but that like none of this shit is easy, but it is all really fucking simple. And I firmly believe that. As far as it goes for mental health as well, you can be paranoid schizophrenic, suffering from betrayal trauma, PTSD from God knows what. You could be a victim of sexual assault, violent car accidents, whatever your trauma is. It does not mean that your case isn't special. It just means that the solutions work for all cases. It just depends on how hard you work them. I blamed everything other than myself for all of my problems all the time. And when I got into recovery, I learned that I cannot be responsible for anything external. I can only be responsible for myself. And so if something bad happened to me, if life on life terms happened, whether it was I got struck by lightning or my girlfriend cheated on me, the only thing that I could be responsible for and the only thing that I'm in control of is how I let it affect me and how I let it affect how I affect the outside world. So when something terrible happens to you, You can hate the thing that happened to you. You can hate the person that did it or the thing that caused it or whatever. But what you can do to make it better is not let it affect the positivity or negativity that you put into the outside world. And for me, that's what this podcast is about. That's what this work with Danny and Brandon is about not living in vain of my mistakes. Every single mistake I make, I have to not live in vain of. That's not to say I won't make the same mistake twice. It's not to say I won't make the same mistake 3 times. But if I can actively and honestly say to myself that I'm trying, and that I'm trying to not just change, but that for me personally, that I'm trying to change in a manner that I can begin to understand and share with other people so that they can help themselves and other people around them as well, then I can feel good as a man of integrity and somebody that can lay my head down on my pillow at night without having to get any external affirmation. I'm currently coming up on 4 years sober. It'll be the first time that I've reached 4 years. Last time I relapsed right before early February. I have a sobriety date of February 6th. And I'm really excited about that, but we don't future count, so I still got to make it there. I can't stress enough to you guys, if you know someone struggling, whether it's mental health or sobriety, recovery, addiction, anything, if it might be you, this is a safe space to reach out. You guys have my personal Instagram. It's DNA_Mac300. I'm the only one on the So Much podcast account most of the time. But if you guys want any information, any help, you want recommendations on medical professionals, you want recommendations on anything that might have resonated with you throughout this talk, please feel free to hit us in a DM, hit us in the YouTube comments. You don't even have to tell us what you need or what you want. Just drop your Instagram handle and we'll hit you up. So Much is entirely about providing as much help as we possibly can to the outside world, and in the process, helping ourselves. So I didn't intend for my talk to take this long, but I hope that this gives you guys some insight as to, how I got to where I am and what I've been through. And I promise that this won't be entirely about me next episode. All right. Big love, guys. Talk to you soon.